Welcome to War Room Pandemic, New York City special report on Talk Radio 77 WABC, America's most powerful radio station. We do this special report every day from 5 to 6 p.m. for the tri-state area in New York City. It is Wednesday, the 25th of March, the year of our Lord 2020. We're live on Capitol Hill. The way we report this is pandemic, one vertical, the economic crisis, another vertical, the financial crisis, another vertical, and how they are inextricably linked. Much to report today on the pandemic itself, particularly in the epicenter of this in the United States of America, which is New York City. Also, we're here to describe to you in the next segment about the economic crisis, a bill that's hung up in the Senate right now, Capitol Hill, right across the street in the nation's capital. And representatives of New York City, I think AOC actually has, the Congressman AOC has the best analysis of what has to happen for getting this vote done. Max Rose chips in here. We have others, Chuck Schumer, Senator Chuck Schumer. We'll get to all of it. And really a deconstruction of this bill of how you're going to get cash. Report out from City College of New York or the City University of New York Economics Department talking about, I think it's 30% of all New Yorkers have had been impacted about job loss so far, and that's, I think, a trailing report. There'll be much more as they go ahead, but massive impact in New York City. This bill is supposed to be the bridging device that gets us through the pandemic, the hard actions yet to come on the pandemic. We're on John Fredericks, America's Voice on Dish 219 and Newsmax TV, all of it principally in the afternoon show, Talk Radio 77 WABC. Okay, today we had Jason Miller, Jack Maxey, my wingman. We're going to go through a bunch of numbers in New York City in a second. A surprise, we had, normally we have Governor Cuomo's presentation. We're waiting here President Trump and the team in the White House in the Brady briefing room. The over and under that President Trump, in all likelihood, will take the stage. It's supposed to be at 5:30. We'll report it live. Normally, they run a few minutes late, anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours. We anticipate we're going to get at least some of this on before we get off the broadcast today. I want to go to, Jason, your assessment. You're the communications director on the 2016 campaign, the greatest come from behind victory in American political presidential history, and also the transitions comms director. It seems like President Trump has now taken, not just President of the United States, he's also now the comms director and the press secretary for the White House, since he's doing the daily briefing and doing a heck of a job, right? If you look at the polling. Walk us through what happened today in the briefings in New York.
Yeah, so Governor Cuomo gave one of his briefings, which it was very thorough, very detailed, made some news by going after the stimulus recovery bill, whatever we're calling it, the phase 3.
He actually recommended, correct me if I'm wrong, he said don't vote for it.
Oh, yeah, he's actively
And my
whipping
question for
against
him, have him and Chuck Schumer been talking about this?
Well,
this is really Chuck Schumer's bill as much as is McConnell's on the Senate side.
Yeah, no, and I mean, it's like, hey, Governor Cuomo, Chuck Schumer, do you guys have each other's numbers? Do you guys slide in each other's?
Because if you voted down today, that means it's through this weekend and next week. The markets are good. Markets are up to date, but I think only 500 points. I'll double check that. This is after massive cash infusion by the Fed, a Federal Reserve bazooka. And Bernanke on the morning shows this morning on CNBC walking through what he did. They calmed the markets, but then the markets backed off in the afternoon because there's now a big spread in the bid and the ask. We'll get to it later in the show, but there's all kind of people running around town. This thing doesn't take care of the little guy well enough. It's got too much crony capitalism. It's state capitalism. You're taking over industries. You're nationalizing industries. A lot of the conservatives are in full meltdown right now that this is after we get over this, you can't go back to limited government. So much contention right now that I think they're marketing about what's to happen. And Cuomo in the middle of this says, I would vote it down. I mean, this is a guy that needs ventilators, needs cash, he needs assistance. The people.
But again, this is the money going to the government. Well, that's what he's upset about because there are hundreds.
But you can't vote part of it down. I mean, if you vote that down,
no.
the little guy doesn't.
But to be clear, what Cuomo's complaining about here, look, there's hundreds of billions of dollars going to hospitals for healthcare, hundreds of $1 billion for businesses, for the little guy, the medium guy, the big guy, trying to help folks, the industries, helping folks all the way across, the gig economy workers, as we talked about at length earlier.
That was a big fight to get that in there.
Such a fundamentally huge thing that the people who are the small business owners, the restaurateurs, the bartenders, people like that have been hurt in this. But this is the money going to the actual governments. And so I think for Governor Cuomo to say, hey, there's only $3 billion going to the state of New York and only $2 billion going to the city of New York, it's being a little bit misleading because we're talking
All
about
it got it's a $2 trillion bill, and all it gets is crummy T-shirt.
right, but that's not actually the case because there are hundreds.
Yes, there's other types of monies coming in there through other methodologies.
Well, do you want me to go and play his clip? Let's see what he has to say here.
And that's why this Senate bill is so troublesome. I know the politics of play nice and don't put any pressure on any other elected official. Otherwise, they'll say you have sharp elbows and you don't play nice in the sandbox. This is not a time to play nice in the sandbox. I represent the people of the state of New York. I get paid to represent them. I'm an attorney. I'm an advocate. I'm a New Yorker born and bred. I'm New York tough. If you are hurting the people of the state, I'm going to do everything I can do to defend them. And I'm going to fight for the people of New York to the best of my ability. And we need more federal help than this bill gives us.
So he continues going there to actually say that he doesn't want people to go and vote for it. But Steve, I want to go back to your initial point. Do he and Schumer not have each other's cell numbers? Are they not sliding into each other's DMs? I mean, what's going on here? We put up a smoke signal. I mean, what do we have to do to have these two guys talk? I thought they're both Democrats from New York City.
No, we have another clip. We finished Cuomo. I know we got a couple other good Cuomos, but I want to get to de Blasio as a compare and contrast. I want to compare New York tough to maybe question mark New York tough.
Yeah. So Mayor de Blasio.
I don't want to criticize the mayor because Rudy gets on here and does it. Carrick does it. Carrick gave an interview off of our thing. He was toughen up, and then he said some crazy stuff. I thought about the mayor. I want to give a mayor in a crisis. I want to give him a fair shot.
Man, I just don't see how you do it after this. So Governor Cuomo has been giving these excellent briefings. I mean, it's been getting national play. CNN picks him up live. MSNBC, even Fox News will go and pick up.
I can tell you President Trump's enjoying them.
He's watching them. You can tell. You
Definitely watching them.
You know he's watching them.
No
I mean,
one-
they don't start the White House briefings until Governor Cuomo's
and they say very complimentary things. I think Cuomo said something again today about President Trump. President Trump's always complimentary about Governor Cuomo.
So we're this far into the process, and Mayor de Blasio decides that today, on March 25th, that he is going to start doing a message from the mayor, not an actual press conference. Now, he has done a couple of little briefing meetings, but they've been just minuscule by comparison to what Governor Cuomo is doing, which also, by the way, this is what Rudy said. It was on the show. It should be the governor, the mayor, and the federal government all doing these together. Like the fact that Cuomo and de Blasio, again, both New York City Democrats, can't get together and do this tells you something. But I think this is much more of an indication of de Blasio. So he does this tape video. I want to go and play this thing because he decides to do this and listen to what Mayor de Blasio says.
I want to make sure we're honest about the reality. Right now, this disease is causing so much pain, so many challenges, so much fear and anxiety. It's going to be with us for months. Probably more than half of all New Yorkers will be infected with this disease. Thank God for the vast majority. It will be a very mild experience, but for a lot of other people, it's going to be really tough.
So Mayor de Blasio starts off with the message from the mayor, the video briefing that nobody wants. And hey, New Yorkers.
Nobody requested that.
Nobody requested this. And this is like one of those spam emails that comes through from a restaurant chain you're never going back to, letting you know that they're instituting great COVID-19 preparation. And it's like, hey, guys, by the way, half you going to get it. It's a 2-minute video. I'll see you around like a donut. I'm out here. I mean, what is Mayor de Blasio doing?
Also, do the math, Jack. I know we're going to go back and do some math on Governor Cuomo, but if you take de Blasio, the 50%, if you take the 15% of what they're saying will be hospitalized, that's over. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's over 500,000 people hospitalized at 8.5 million. Let's round up. New York City population. Half of that's what 4.25 million. I don't know if Brian Williams.
4.25.
But you do that, and it's 10 to 15% on hospitalizations for beds. That's where they're using. That's where we're using the Cuomo stuff. Roughly, that's what we're hearing. That gets you over 400,000. 500,000 hospital beds. It's also at the 1% death rate right now. The mortality rate is 42,000 dead. I'm saying I think if I was the mayor, I would caveat this with just I wouldn't drop this in my first message from the mayor. right?
It's a video. It's a video message.
It's a video message. Not even a question. A reporter can't light you. One of the guys from the Post can't light you up.
Well, I think he's counting on not having many Dave Ramaswamis as listeners. I mean, I think this is math.
But this, I also don't think it's. This is what you don't want to do. Remember, the only thing you have to fear is fear itself. You don't want ill-informed complacency, as we say on the show all the time. We said starting back in January, you can't have that. But you also don't want to cause. I'm not saying panic, but this is when people start sitting there going, "Hey, 50%. Where is that in the analysis, right?" And just back that up. I just don't think you ought to dump that out in some.
Also, you have to remember when they're talking about these 50%, 60% infected. This is not in one round. This is going to be over a period of time, maybe several years.
No, but he specifically said over months and years. He was very specific about the time frame. Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. We're here with the New York City Special Report War Room Pandemic on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Jack Maxey, Jason Miller, Stephen K. Bannon, live from Capitol Hill. We'll return in a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
President Xi of China says this virus is a demon and we cannot allow this demon to hide. Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States, says nothing is inevitable. And he means by that human agency and human action is what is going to get us through this. That we're going to talk today about the pandemic. We're talking about the economic crisis, the solution for that, the short term. It's not a stimulus. It's actually a relief bill. It gets us back up to where we would be. This bridges whatever action is going to be taken keeping this country closed. This is Talk Radio 77 WABC, America's most powerful radio station. War Room Pandemic, the New York City Special Report. I want to go back to Mayor de Blasio just threw out some numbers today. I would like the mayor's office, we got to get on top of that, to clarify that. I think when he puts out numbers like that, he's got some backup. Governor Cuomo, one of the things I like about his briefings, and this is one of the reasons what I don't like about what Dr. Fauci says, and I realize the media's put him up as the oracle of this, right? The scientist, evidence-based, got to be database. I'm all for that. That's what we've done on this show from the very beginning. We got Hatfield and these people in here with all the concepts about exponentiality with Dave Ramaswamy. You got them in with the R-OT rate, all of that, the mortality rate. Dr. Fauci was on 77 WABC on January 26th. John Catsimatidis interviewed him, and The Hill had the thing after I had promoted, hey, this thing was going to be the biggest thing in human history. It's coming out of Wuhan. They're shutting down this area of Hubei province, the size of France, 80 million people. They're going to quarantine a city 40% bigger than New York City that nobody ever heard of. This thing is massive. John Catsimatidis on that great Sunday show he has on 77 WABC interviews Fauci. The Hill has the big story. Fauci, America has nothing to worry about. America has nothing to worry about. Now, I really admire Dr. Fauci. He's a good man, and I think he's done a good job in this. But you notice he never mentions any numbers? Never talks about any numbers. Never heard him mention a number. It's all kind of general, and he's always moving the goalpost. So for the mainstream media out there, this is about mathematics. What I like about Governor Cuomo's presentations every day, Governor Cuomo comes and gives you a set of math. I mean, he talks about the doubling rate. It changes because the data here, you're kind of getting it as you go. But he's very good about saying, this is what I don't like about de Blasio. I just don't like throwing out numbers like that because you do the back of the envelope with what other people said. Hey, all of a sudden, I've got a big problem. I don't think we have enough beds.
Certainly, Cuomo.
We have to get a bigger boat, right, is in Jaws, right? That's what I don't like about that. I think the mayor's got to be, and I've been defending Mayor de Blasio, and I realize I'm a right-wing partisan, but he's under a lot of pressure. This is, one of the biggest crises, if not the biggest crisis in the history of the most important city in the United States, and I believe the most important city in the world. We all have to pull together on this. So we want to be as helpful and constructive as possible. To try to be constructive, Mayor de Blasio, I think you got to come back out on your next message from the mayor. My strong belief, you ought to have a whiteboard. And you ought to sit there. And if you can't do it, I understand some people aren't. Just don't do a Brian Williams on us. Just get somebody on your staff. You put together your war council. get someone on your staff to walk through your idea what the metrics are, and I would actually bounce it off Governor Cuomo. Maybe you two can come to.
That's what I was going to say. Brilliant idea. Why don't they have the same numbers?
Hold it. So, I know Governor Cuomo right now is not talking to Chuck Schumer about the deal, right? And now he wants to have it voted down. But maybe they get their phone number. But I think de Blasio's staff and the governor's staff sit down and have a general consensus, doesn't it? Every day it's going to change. And if they have disagreements, do it behind the stage and they come out on the whiteboard and let's walk down, let's write it down. I want to go to Cuomo's math. Cuomo says today that it's going to double every 3 days. We round up to 5 days to give him the benefit of the doubt. He says today in New York City, what is it, 18,000, I believe is the base.
18,000.
The way I think it doubles out, he says it's going to peak in 21 days. That gets us out basically to the 14th or 15th of April. That looks like 288,000. By the way, we may be wrong here, but I think just back of the envelope, I said, let's do this. It's 288,000. If you take the 10 to 15%, they're saying 15 to 20%, I think, of the people infected. So that's the number of infected.
Require hospitalization.
Roughly 288 infected, 10 to 20%. We take the thing of 15%. That gets us to what? To 42,000. Thank you, Vish Burr from Staten Island. I got to check that high school degree. I think Vish got straight D's in math on this one. He pulled off. Vish Burr from one of the boroughs. Okay, 42,000 hospitalized. That kind of makes sense because then you see where Cuomo's coming from the surge for the beds, right? You see where this is going. Then you got to think about the ICU units. We got some new news too about the respiratory technicians. We're going to have some people in here over the next couple of days on this show to talk about the gating event, maybe the respiratory technicians. But I got 42,000. I'm at 42,000 surge capacity of beds, and I'm at mortality, if that's correct, right? Of 2,800, roughly 2,800 people, which puts this, if that's correct, and these are all just kind of rough numbers. That puts us at a mortality close to 9/11, within a couple of hundred, right?
Absolutely. If I might interject here on this whole complaint about lack of supplies from the federal government, I think there's something that came out in the press today that people really should think about. New York State in 2015, Cuomo had been governor for 4 years, did a study on ventilators for the pandemic. Now, Zucker, who is the commissioner of health, wrote, "It is my sincere hope these guidelines will never need to be implemented, but as a physician and a servant in public health, I know that such preparations are essential." Now, here's the really stunning part. They have a plan for a serious pandemic, but because of budgetary, decided not to plan for it. They bought only 1,750 extra ventilators, and, quote, from the study, "There are no current plans to buy enough ventilators for the more severe model."
I'm going to make a general observation because I'm usually the guy that's the most obnoxious and the biggest hammer. In this regard, I think those type of things, I think those are very important. And I think that's all. I think that all gets adjudicated later. We ought to sit down and how this came about. Right now, we're at general quarters. It's all hands on deck. Everybody at your general quarters position. If you're on the bridge, or if you're in combat, I came off a destroyer. And that's why I try to give Mayor de Blasio, on a policy basis, I'm not a big de Blasio fan. I wasn't a big fan of his when he ran for president. But in this situation, I think because this is the greatest crisis the city's ever faced, we've got to pull together. And so I fully understand it. There's going to be some real questioning about the plans and who bought what and who's supposed to supply what. Right now, I just think when you look at when you triage it, the federal government's got to be the support function, right? The governor is the management function, and Mayor de Blasio draws a short stick. He's the execution function, and that we got to live with that because right now the mayor has got to execute on this. Okay, War Room Pandemic, New York City special report, 77 Talk Radio, WABC. We're going to return in just a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Talk Radio, 77 WABC. This is War Room Pandemic, the New York City special report. Jason Miller, a couple of days ago, the governor, and I can't believe he had to ask for this, he asked for, hey, where's the plan for New York City? it's kind of blew my mind. He's got to ask for the plan. He got to ask for it, I think, in his press conference. And he asked for it the next day. This is when he didn't even remember de Blasio's name. Remember the head of the city council said, and the mayor. I think they missed the target. But am I right to assume that today, since we had the message from the mayor, that he's got the plan ready to go?
Well, Governor Cuomo referenced this plan in talking to both the mayor and the speaker of the city council. Let's go and play Governor Cuomo from his press conference going into this a little bit.
The problem myself firsthand. I spoke to Mayor de Blasio. I spoke to Speaker Johnson. We said come up with a plan in 24 hours that everybody agreed with. They came up with a plan. We're now implementing that plan. I signed off on that plan. The plan is going to pilot closing streets in New York City because we have much less traffic in New York City. We have many fewer vehicles in New York City. Open streets. People want to walk. They want to go out and get some air. You want a less dense area. So pilot closing streets to cars, opening streets to pedestrians. We'll also enact mandatory playground social density, which is probably a new concept, close contact sports in a playground. No basketball, for example. You cannot do it. We're asking people to do that on a voluntary basis. If there is non-compliance with that, we will then make it mandatory, and we will actually close the playgrounds. We don't want to do that because playgrounds are a place to go out and get open.
Okay. I'm just going to throw this out there. You guys respond. On the very first, when we started doing War and Pandemic, we wanted to get the top experts in the world to start thinking this through. Given the scale of what was happening in China, we said this is going to blow all over the world, right? We brought in Joe Norman, who's Nassim Taleb's partner, one of the partners at the New England Institute of Complex Systems, to talk about complex systems. He said, in these complex, and Nassim Taleb is the famous author of Black Swan and many other books, one of the smartest guys in the country. Joe Norman, his partner, comes in and says, in these complex systems, you must take draconian action down front, or the perturbations later on or just blow things up. And he was saying at the time, we had Joe back on the show because he was very frustrated at the federal level about what was being done. If you go back today to the mayor's message of what Mayor de Blasio said at 50% infection rates, and you go to the Governor Cuomo's about peaking in 21 days in the 288,000, in the casualty rates we have from that, using the assumptions that have been laid out for us, that 15% hospitalized, right, with the surge in hospital beds, and knowing that we don't have the technicians for the ventilators, knowing that we have the letter to the doctors, is that we don't have all the doctor and nurse units we're going to have to handle this. You're going to have volunteers. That the rate of mortality, just on their math, somehow gets close to 9/11. Governor Cuomo is quite proud. He comes out New York tough. And I said this the other day on Maria Bartiromo about what I recommended to the president about a full lockdown of the country. Lock it down now. Do the financial bridge so people get paid. But you got to lock it down now. You got to take the host bodies away so the disease can't travel. New York City, my belief, needs to do a much harder lockdown today. And I think it's actually got to avoid being Wuhan, and I'm not a professional, but I'm a posit this, you've got to almost go to the same quarantine that Wuhan did. So you got to do hard. I don't want to hear about the playgrounds, and I'm going to not play basketball, and play basketball, and you're going to do this and that and the other thing. On his math, on the governor's math, that it peaks at 288,000 in 21 days. This is the most important things you do. And as Norman and the guys at the Complex Institute says, boom, you got to drop it down now. You've got to drop. He wants to flatten the curve. You have to crash the curve.
What about subways and parks? I mean, those are two that just jump out right away.
I think subway. Listen, you don't need to take a subway because you're not going to be going anywhere. There's nobody going to work. You're not going to go to theaters. You're not going to go to parks. The subways have got to close. You have to quarantine, essentially lock down the city, like Hubei province. I think even going to quarantine, and this means people leaving. Burke stands up there yesterday and says people go to New York ought to be 14 days. My strong recommendation, and don't take this the wrong way, New York, because we're pulling for you. That's what we're doing this show. And we covered Wuhan from the very beginning. It's got to be quarantined. And that means nobody going out, nobody coming in except for emergency services, that sort of thing. And it's got to be a hard lockdown, particularly in these 21 days. You're running up, you're going up to the peak. It's not just trying to flatten it. You need to crash it. And my point, all the things we're hearing, the actions are not quite dovetailing with where the math is taken. If you believe Mayor de Blasio, because he didn't say a couple of years, he's not talking about a second and third wave, Jack. He's talking about, at least what he says, months, maybe up to a year. He's talking about wave one. If what de Blasio is saying in message to the mayor, and I hope the mayor redoes his math, then you absolutely have to do it, because he's saying you're going to have 500. You're going to have 500,000.
And Steve, an important point here. This isn't,
Am I wrong here? Am I missing it?
Look, the New York Times.
I didn't come out on Maria Bartiromo and say that. By the way, Tom Friedman's column in the New York Times, you talk to the CEOs and their editorial both back what up.
Today's New York Times editorial says a national 2-week shelter in place. So, I mean, when's the last time Steve Bannon was saying the same thing as the New York Times editorial
Not
page?
just that, Friedman and the New York Times drafting off me with no shout up, but I'm fine. Hey, I don't care. I was just a junior naval officer. I know how to be. I'm a grundoon. I got that. I just took one for the team on Sunday, right? The president later in his thing says, yeah, it was pretty brutal. Bannon's thing was pretty brutal. It is brutal. It's not the show. And this is why the false equivalent and I have a lot. I like Steve Hilton. He's a good guy. I like the popular show on Sunday night. But it was a false equivalent. It's not that it's not the economy or the shutdown. We have to get through. Look, we're going to go through hell. Let's go through it as fast as possible, right? Let's not drag this thing out. We've got this bill. We'll get to this in the next time. Very imperfect. And the execution part of it could be tough. We can make it better. We're going to make comments. I know other people have comments. I think with Max Rose had some problems with it. Other people have problems. I know the conservatives do. A bunch of Cortez, Eric Bolling, guys who have come up with good solutions have problems with it. But that's the bridging mechanism. When that bridging mechanism is in place, then you know that people are going to – the small business guy is going to make his payroll. The little guy is going to get his paycheck. Right, we're going to take care of the capital markets. Going to be there. We're already trading remotely from all the exchanges are already remote anyway. So my whole point is lock it down, and the whole country should be locked down. But man, we shouldn't even be having this discussion about New York City. You don't want to be Wuhan. We don't need to be Wuhan. But just on Governor Cuomo's set of math, you're worse than Wuhan. I think, or at least in shouting distance and 9/11. Just on if it's the 1%. Now, all of these assumptions can change. I got that. But just directionally, these both say I don't need to worry about going around and having the police say, hey, you're playing basketball and you're playing shirts and skins and you're too close. You got to no, I mean, this is 21 days is going to determine the future of this city. Shut it down. You got to lock this place down. And I think I don't need to have Ambassador Dr. Birx up on the stage saying, just kind of dropping it out there, oh, by the way, everybody coming into New York City, because that was she just stuffed in everybody coming to New York City. We're recommending a 14-day quarantine, right? It's you got to – obviously New York got infected by people coming from Europe, people coming from all over because it's a major transportation. Why? It's the most important city in the world. That's why they came here. That's why we had this problem. But now it is you got to come to grips with it, particularly in the next 3 weeks. Correct me if I'm going to jump in here.
No, I agree with you in part. I don't think that we need to do this in every single place. I don't even know that the entire state of New York needs to be shut down.
I'm saying New York City. Well, first of all, I think you got to lock down the country. And one reason is you don't want it to spread in any other places. Another thing is going to come up. You got a mini New York. One that's going to be worse than New York, I think, is New Orleans. And I think New Orleans is going to. We
have breaking news on that. Governor John Bel Edwards was just on CNN and said that April 7th is when they're going to April 7th is when this is going to their hospitals are going to be overflowing. Let me play the very brief clip.
Okay.
Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards. Governor, thanks so much for joining us. Let's talk about Louisiana right now. The number of reported cases in your state jumped by 400 today alone. Just move up your timeline for how soon hospitals in Louisiana might be overwhelmed?
Well, it really keeps us on the current trajectory, the one that we've been using to model our estimates. And right now we believe that by about April the 7th in Region 1, which is down around New Orleans, that we would exceed our capacity to deliver health care in the hospitals. And that's even as we're surging in our hospital footprint. We're bringing online the Tier 2 hospitals, the long-term acute care facilities.
So Governor John Bell Edwards keeps going, but April 7th, that's when they're full.
Hashtag War Room Pandemic. One of the great things about this community and this audience we're building is that we want your critiques, your observation, particularly your news. A couple of folks from down there saying we don't think it's as bad as we're hearing, that you guys are hearing false information. Send us backup. Send us data. We want videos. Send us anything. Hashtag War Room Pandemic. And clearly around New York City, we want as much input as possible on this. But here you got, and hey, different than New York City, which New York City was because it's a global transportation hub and the railhead of global capital markets. In New Orleans, and I don't want to, and I said all this stuff of saying, hey, these guys did something wrong, no ventilators. In New Orleans, and we said this on the show months ago, when they had Mardi Gras, this was people not, this was the mayor of the town in Jaws, right, that didn't want to close over the 4th of July because of the shark, right? To have Mardi Gras, it would have taken a profile and courage to do it, but they should have done it. That's one of the reasons that they've got this infection.
So to that point, I won't play the whole clip because we're crunched on time, but Wolf Blitzer asked Governor Edwards about that and said, in hindsight, do you think it should have been canceled this year? Governor Edwards, and this kind of goes into the really? Come on. Anyways, he says, well, I don't want to entertain the question because there was not any suggestion by anybody at the CDC or anywhere else that Mardi Gras would pose a risk to public health because of coronavirus. I mean, I never heard that. I'm like, hey, guess what? Here are 2 other helpful tips. Don't put your finger in an electrical socket and don't eat yellow snow. That's
just not acceptable. Because
how, as a governor, can you say that you didn't think Mardi Gras would pose
and
a
problem?
And
you don't need CDC calling you up and saying not to do it. You're supposed to be a governor and a mayor. You're supposed to be on top of the news and know what's happening. A lot of people are saying, we were saying on the show, those types of gatherings are ticking time bombs.
But to be fair to the governor, Mardi Gras was the week of February 18th through the 25th?
Yeah, that was 3 weeks after
Wuhan
was shut down.
Stop flights
on
from China.
On the 25th of February, in the United States, there were 59 total cases. We have to remember, this panic that we're going through right now had occurred in the last 10, 12 days.
Because people can do the math, but if you're an elected official at the governor's level, this is what you're hired to do. You got to think downrange. You don't think tomorrow morning. You got to think downrange. I disagree. The president of the United States came out with the boldest thing. He's done a lot of bold action, but he shut down all flights from China and quarantined everybody coming back from China. If that's not a flashing red light, I don't know what is. And Mardi Gras, they're all packed in. I'm just saying. I think New Orleans could be in real trouble, and we're going to have to see. Remember, we had Rudy on the other day. That New York City has a hospital system that's quite good. You have the greatest other private, Columbia Presbyterian, Lenox Hill, New York Hospital. You have all these other great hospitals, Cornell Medical Center. New Orleans does not have any of that right now. Correct me if I'm wrong. 50% of their emergency workers are out on sick leave. Right? Either they quarantine, 50%.
That's directly from the mayor of New Orleans.
And we're seeing this in a couple different places in the country because these early coronavirus patients come into the hospital, get the EMTs, and they don't have any gear. And when the person ends up testing positive, all those people who were in contact go into quarantine.
Two Republican governors today, Florida and Texas, they had the emergency, what do they call it, the emergency declaration.
Yes, it just allows FEMA to be able to come in and start providing funding.
This is what Governor Cuomo had requested and had, I think, 10 days ago, Friday.
Yes.
Okay, they finally got it. Right, DeSantis and Abbott. That's a huge move. Louisiana, I think, got it last night. I think it's Cuomo that also said about the U.S. Army, and I think it was also De Blasio, to his credit. I don't think, and the admiration I have for the FEMA people is unbelievable. They do a great job. These are heroes because they're always going out when everybody else wants to come in, right? It's like the Coast Guard. They're going out to sea when, having been a destroyer officer, I know how the Coast Guard goes in these typhoons. FEMA's the same way. They go into the heart of the problem. But they're set up, they're structured for one big superstorm Sandy and come, or Katrina, or Andrew down in Florida, or a huge flood of the Mississippi River. We have 20 Katrinas building right now, right? That's what you got. You got 20, and you got a superstorm here in New York City, one in New Orleans. You got to look at what Chicago, Detroit, et cetera, is not what de Blasio and the governor talked about. the United States Army, the greatest logistical effort ever. We're going to get into this when we get back. Jack Maxey does not agree with me on this whatsoever. We're going to take a short commercial break. This is 77 WABC Talk Radio, America's most powerful radio station in New York City, New York. War Room Pandemic, the New York City Special Report. Jack Maxey, Stephen K. Bannon, Jason Miller. We're going to return with this discussion of should the Army come out to provide the logistics function for New York City in a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Talk Radio 77 WABC, War Room Pandemic, New York City Special Report. We're live today in the War Room. The President of the United States has just taken the stage for his press conference. We're going to get to that momentarily, but I want to get to, real quickly before we talk about the President, I want to get to Max Rose, Congressman Max Rose, Captain Max Rose, United States Army awardee of a Bronze Star, I believe, and a Purple Heart? No Bronze Star? A Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. Okay, and let's go to Max Rose.
This requires the actions of the federal government and a wartime footing. 8 days ago or so, I called on the president to work with the governor to bring a naval ship to New York Harbor. That is on its way with 1,000 beds for non-COVID patients so we can relieve the stress on the existing hospitals. Our VA system needs to be opened up to non-veterans, and they need to start building out into wings that they were not formally using. The Army, the military, should deploy at least a medical battalion, if not a medical brigade, to Fort Hamilton base in my district, the only active duty base in New York City, so they can build a field hospital. You know, when
that was Max Rose today on CNN, I think. Jack, give us an update. The U.S. Army is deploying a couple of battalions. I don't think brigades. Where are they?
Yesterday, they announced that the 531st Hospital from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, the 627th Hospital from Fort Carson, Colorado, the 9th Hospital from Fort Hood, all deploying to Washington State and to New York. Now, I'm not sure which group ends up in New York, but the president is sending in the cavalry.
You don't agree with me on that. You don't think. By the way, I don't agree with Max Rose about the VA. I don't think you want to get this the bug, this virus by those VA hospitals.
And when has anyone ever championed and said, "Hey, VA provides the absolute best"? I mean, let's
yeah. I think we got to be very careful about that. I got a lot of respect for Max Rose.
Number one thing that we have to remember: every single state was supposed to plan for this, just like the federal government was supposed to plan for this. Although it is a horrific thing and we are suffering, look, you've got the comfort on its way. You've got a couple of field hospitals on your way. I personally think it is a great danger to put at risk the force security of the United States military to run around like firemen around this country, potentially exposing the sharp tip of our spear, which protects the entire country for the purpose of protecting individual states, cities, etc. I think we can do it in a measured way, but it certainly should not be all in.
Okay, good.
President Trump is now behind the podium in the briefing room, the Brady briefing room at the White House. Only 5 up on the stage in addition to the president, the vice president, Secretary Mnuchin. You have Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx, so it's just the 5 of them. President Trump just said that New York has, quote, a number of very tough weeks ahead of them, end quote.
A number of very tough weeks ahead of him. So he's now in there. I think Cuomo and the president are working very well. As you think about these tough weeks, and that's why we're here for you every day, and we're talking to people all the time about helping out, going to the White House with equipment and the drugs and all this stuff. Remember, I want you to keep this in mind. Remember something. This is visited upon us by the Chinese Communist Party. What's happening in your city? I'm not saying they did anything in the P4 lab in Wuhan. We'll adjudicate that later, as Tom Cotton says. We got to see the information. But they withheld and suppressed the information. We started the show for 60 days. It's exploded. It's the CCP virus is coming upon. Just remember that. You've got to embrace that the Chinese Communist Party allowed this to happen, and that's why it's in New York City, and that's why this destruction of the wealth, the destruction of your incomes, the destruction of your economy, and if you look at these numbers, something as bad as 9/11 is coming.
And President Trump just said, quote, I want you to know that I'm doing everything in my power to help the city pull through this challenge.
Okay, we're going to be back here. The stakes are high, and that's why I'm saying quarantine the city. Drop the hammer now. The governor is a tough guy. He's New York tough. He's been terrific so far. Don't flatten the curve. Smash the curve. We need to take this virus on, and we need to defeat it. And New York City is the exact place to take our stand in the United States of America. Jason Miller, Jack Maxey, Stephen K. Bannon. We will be back tomorrow with War Room Pandemic New York City Special Report on 77 WABC Talk Radio.